The dreaded first Dana Teely Brooks pressed the button for the 40th floor, her hands trembling slightly as she balanced the cardboard tray holding 6 steaming cups of coffee. Her first week as a junior marketing coordinator at Knight Enterprises was not going exactly as planned. The gleaming skyscraper in downtown Chicago felt more like a fortress than an office building, and every polished surface seemed to reflect her growing nervousness. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, watching the floor numbers climb. "It's just coffee delivery. Nothing could possibly go wrong." She had no idea how spectacularly wrong things were about to go. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime onto the executive floor. The carpet here was thicker, the silence more profound. Natalie stepped out carefully, trying to remember the route to the conference room where the Monday morning leadership meeting was already underway. Her supervisor had sent her up with explicit instructions to enter quietly and distribute the drinks without disrupting anything. The conference room doors were solid oak and remarkably heavy. Natalie tried to push one open with her shoulder while keeping the coffee tray balanced, a maneuver that required more coordination than she possessed. At 7:30 in the morning, the door swung open faster than she expected. Time seemed to slow down as Natalie stumbled forward. The coffee tray tilted at a dangerous angle. She watched in horror as the largest cup, filled with black coffee heated to exactly 180 degrees, launched itself through the air in a perfect arc toward the head of the table. Toward Harrison Knight. The untouchable CEO Harrison Knight was a legend in Chicago business circles. At just 34, he had transformed his grandfather's struggling manufacturing company into a tech and innovation powerhouse worth billions. But his success came with a reputation: cold, ruthless, impossible to please. Employees avoided making eye contact with him in elevators. Executives rehearsed presentations for days before facing him. His assistant had quit last month, reportedly due to stress-related health issues. Nobody dared to get close to Harrison, right? And Natalie had just doused him with scalding coffee. The liquid splashed across his chest, soaking through his crisp white shirt and clearly expensive navy suit jacket. Dark stains spread across the fabric like ink in water. Every single person in the conference room froze. 14 executives sat motionless, their eyes wide with the kind of horror usually reserved for natural disasters. "Oh my God," Natalie gasped, setting down what remained of the coffee tray with shaking hands. "I am so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. The door was heavier than I thought, and the tray just flew, and I am so incredibly sorry." Harrison stood slowly. He was tall, probably 6'3", with dark hair that was perfectly styled even at this early hour. His jaw was strong, his eyes a piercing gray that seemed to see straight through people. Right now, those eyes were fixed on Natalie with an intensity that made her want to disappear into the expensive carpet. The silence stretched on, or what felt like an eternity. Patricia Walsh, the HR director, known for her sharp tongue and love of workplace drama, rose from her seat like a cobra preparing to strike. "This is absolutely unacceptable," she announced, her voice cutting through the tension. "Mr. Knight, I will have security escort this girl out immediately. Such clumsiness is inexcusable in a professional environment." "That won't be necessary," Harrison said quietly. Patricia blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said that won't be necessary." Harrison's voice was calm, controlled, but held an authority that made Patricia sit back down immediately. He looked at Natalie, who was fighting back tears of humiliation. "Accidents happen. Everyone in this room can leave now. The meeting is over." "But sir, we haven't finished the quarterly projections." One brave executive ventured. Harrison's gaze never left Natalie. "I said the meeting is over. All of you out. Now." The executives scrambled to gather their materials, shooting curious glances at Natalie as they filed out. Patricia paused at the door, her expression promising that this conversation was far from finished, before reluctantly leaving, an unexpected kindness when the door closed behind the last executive. Natalie found herself alone with the man whose career she was certain she had just destroyed. Harrison pulled off his soaked jacket and laid it carefully over a chair. The coffee had soaked through to his shirt, and she could see the outline of his undershirt beneath the wet fabric. "I really am so sorry," Natalie said again, her voice small. I will pay for dry cleaning. Or a new suit. Whatever you need. I understand if you want to fire me. I've only been here for days, so it probably will not even look bad on my record. Harrison studied her for a moment. Up close, she could see that his eyes were not purely gray but had flecks of blue in them. There were fine lines at the corners, suggesting he smiled more than his reputation indicated, even if nobody ever saw it. "What is your name?" he asked Natalie Brooks. "I work in marketing." "Worked, I guess." Past tense now. To her absolute shock, the corner of his mouth twitched. It was not quite a smile, but it was close. "Miss Brooks, you are not fired. Though I would suggest using both hands for coffee trays in the future. You are not going to fire me? Should I fire everyone who makes a mistake on their first week? I would have no employees left." He walked to a cabinet along the wall and pulled out what looked like an emergency change of clothes. A fresh shirt, still in dry cleaning plastic. "I keep spares here for exactly this reason. Though usually I am the one spilling things on myself during long work sessions." Natalie watched in amazement as he turned away and began unbuttoning his ruined shirt. She quickly looked at the floor, her cheeks burning. "Mr. Knight, thank you for not firing me, really, but everyone will think I should be fired. Patricia Walsh looked like she wanted to throw me off the building. Patricia Walsh does not make hiring decisions." "I do." His voice was matter of fact. "And I have learned that people who make mistakes and own up to them are often more valuable than people who are too afraid to take risks in the first place." When she dared to look up again, he had changed into the fresh shirt and was adjusting his tie, or trying to. His hands seemed unusually clumsy with the silk. The knot kept coming out crooked. Without thinking, Natalie stepped forward. "May I?" Harrison looked startled but nodded. Her grandmother had taught her how to tie ties when she was 12, practicing on her grandfather before church every Sunday. Her hands moved with automatic precision, loosening the failed knot and starting fresh. She was acutely aware of how close she was standing to him, could smell his cologne mixed with coffee, could feel the warmth radiating from him. "There," she said softly, smoothing down the finished tie. "Perfect." When she looked up, Harrison was staring at her with an expression she could not quite read. Something between surprise and curiosity, with a hint of something else she did not dare name. "Thank you," he said quietly. "It is the least I could do after destroying your Monday morning." This time he definitely smiled. It was small, barely there, but it transformed his entire face. He looked younger, more approachable, almost kind. "My Monday mornings are usually terrible anyway. You just gave me an excuse to end a boring meeting early." Ripples and still water news of the coffee incident spread through night. Enterprises faster than rumors about the annual bonus structure. By lunch, everyone in the building had heard some version of the story. Most versions had Natalie being escorted out by security. Some claimed Harrison had shouted at her for 10 minutes. One particularly creative account suggested she had been banished to the mailroom. None of them came close to the truth. Corey Matthews, Natalie's best friend since college and fellow marketing coordinator, cornered her in the break room. "Tell me everything," he demanded, his eyes wide. "And I mean everything. Did he really not fire you?" "He was actually nice about it," Natalie said, still processing the morning herself. "Like, genuinely nice. He said accidents happen." Harrison Knight said accidents happen. Corey looked skeptical. "Are we talking about the same person? The man who once made a director cry during a presentation about paperclip expenses? I know how it sounds, but he was calm. Kind even. And Corey, when I fixed his tie, he just let me. Stood there completely still while I fixed it." Corey's jaw dropped. "You touched Harrison Knight, voluntarily, and lived to tell the tale. It sounds crazy when you say it like that, because it is crazy. Nobody touches Harrison Knight. Everyone knows that. He has a 3-foot personal space bubble that nobody violates, ever. But Natalie had violated it. And instead of the Arctic response everyone would have predicted, she had received something else entirely. Warmth, brief, carefully controlled, but definitely warmth. She found herself thinking about that moment throughout the afternoon. The way he had stood so still while she fixed his tie. The small smile that had appeared when she smoothed down the silk. the flecks of blue in his gray eyes that nobody else probably ever got close enough to see. At 5 o'clock, she was packing up her desk. Her computer pinged with an email from Harrison Knight. Her heart jumped into her throat as she opened it. Miss Brooks, please see the attached revised meeting schedule for this week. I will need coffee each morning at 7:15 a.m. Black. No sugar, no cream. Do not worry about spilling it. Bring it directly to my office. Thank you, Harrison Knight. Natalie read the email 3 times. He was not punishing her. He was giving her a reason to see him every morning, unless she was reading too much into it. Maybe he just needed coffee and she happened to be available, but something in her gut told her it was more than that. Corey read over her shoulder and whistled. Hello. Girl, I do not know what you did to that man, but he is definitely interested. He is my boss. The CEO of the entire company. He is not interested in me. Keep telling yourself that. Meanwhile, I will be watching this unfold like the best romance novel ever written. Natalie closed her laptop, her mind spinning. Tomorrow morning, she would walk into Harrison Knight's office with his coffee. She would probably be nervous. She might even spill it again. But something had shifted in the universe when she fixed his tie. Something neither of them fully understood yet. Outside the windows, Chicago was lighting up for the evening, thousands of windows glowing against the darkening sky. Somewhere in this building, Harrison Knight was probably still working, probably thinking about quarterly reports and market projections. But maybe, just maybe, he was also thinking about the girl who had spilled coffee on him and then stood close enough to fix his tie. The girl who had looked up at him without fear, without calculation, with nothing but honest remorse and surprising gentleness. Maybe the Ice King was not so. Frozen after all, the morning ritual 3 weeks had passed since the coffee incident, and Natalie's morning routine had become the subject of intense office speculation. Every day at exactly 7:15 a.m., she walked into Harrison Knight's office with his black coffee. Every day she found something small to fix. A crooked tie, a piece of lint on his shoulder, a collar that needed straightening. And every day, Harrison stood perfectly still and let her. Good morning, Mr. Knight, Natalie said cheerfully, on a particularly gray Tuesday morning, setting his coffee on the desk. She had started humming while she worked, old songs her grandmother had taught her. At first, Harrison had frowned at the noise, but lately she noticed he seemed more relaxed when she sang. Good morning, Natalie. He had stopped calling her Miss Brooks after the first week. Your tie is crooked again, she observed, stepping closer. Do you do this on purpose? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Harrison's eyebrow raised slightly, and for a terrifying moment, she thought she had crossed a line. Then his lips curved into that rare, devastating smile. Maybe I do, he admitted quietly. Maybe I have forgotten how to tie them properly. Natalie's hands stilled on the silk. They were standing so close, she could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, could count his eyelashes if she wanted to. Or maybe, she said softly, you just like having someone close enough to fix them. Harrison's gray eyes darkened. Maybe I do. The moment stretched between them, electric and fragile. Then his phone rang, shattering the spell. Harrison cleared his throat and stepped back, suddenly all business again. That will be the Tokyo office. Thank you for the coffee, of course. Natalie left his office with her heart pounding, aware that something significant had just passed between them. Something that could not be taken back. The gala, the annual Knight Enterprises charity gala, was the social event of the Chicago season. Held at the Four Seasons Ballroom, it attracted CEOs, politicians, and old money families who treated the evening as an opportunity to see and be seen. Harrison attended every year, always alone, always leaving early. This year, however, everything was different. You want me to attend the gala with you? Natalie asked, certain she had misheard. They were in his office during her morning coffee delivery, and Harrison had just asked the question as casually as if he were requesting quarterly reports. As my guest, Harrison clarified, not as staff. There will be dancing, dinner, probably some tedious conversations with people who think their money makes them interesting. I would like you there, Harrison. People will talk. I am just a marketing coordinator. You are the CEO. People will think I am trying to use you to climb the corporate ladder, or something worse. Let them think whatever they want." His voice was firm. "I am asking you because I want to spend the evening with someone whose company I actually enjoy. Will you come?" How could she say no to that? The night of the gala, Natalie wore a simple navy dress that she had spent 2 weeks searching for. Not too fancy, not too plain, elegant enough to fit in, but not trying too hard to impress. When Harrison picked her up from her apartment, the look on his face told her she had chosen correctly. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "You clean up pretty well yourself." She smiled, reaching up instinctively to adjust his tie. It was already perfect, but her hands had developed a habit of touching him, and he had developed a habit of letting her. The ballroom was spectacular, all crystal chandeliers and fresh flowers. But Natalie barely noticed the decorations. She was too aware of Harrison's hand resting lightly on her lower back as they moved through the crowd. The way he stayed close to her side, the protective edge in his voice when introducing her to people who looked at her with too much curiosity. "That is Natalie Brooks," she heard someone whisper as they passed. "The coffee girl. Can you believe he brought her here?" Harrison's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, a smooth voice cut through the murmurs. "Harrison, darling, what a surprise." The woman who approached was stunning in the way that money and genetics could create. Tall, blonde, wearing a dress that probably cost more than Natalie's monthly rent. She moved with the confidence of someone who had never been told no in her entire life. "Jennifer," Harrison said, his voice carefully neutral. "Jennifer Cole." Natalie recognized the name from office gossip. Harrison's ex-girlfriend from before he took over the company. Old money, society connections, everything someone in his position was supposed to want. "I heard rumors you were bringing someone tonight, but I had to see it to believe it." Jennifer's green eyes assessed Natalie with the precision of a jeweler examining a suspicious diamond. "And who might this be?" "Natalie Brooks," Harrison said before Natalie could introduce herself. "She works at Knight Enterprises." The emphasis on her name was subtle but clear. This was not the coffee girl or my assistant. This was Natalie, and she mattered. "How lovely," Jennifer purred, though her smile never reached her eyes. "Harrison always was good at finding diamonds in the rough. Though, darling, you should know he gets bored easily. 3 months is usually his limit before he moves on to the next shiny distraction." Natalie felt the words like a physical blow. Was that what she was? A temporary distraction for a bored billionaire? "Jennifer, that is enough," Harrison said sharply. "I am simply looking out for her, darling. Someone should tell her the truth before she gets too attached." Jennifer placed a perfectly manicured hand on Harrison's arm. "Remember our agreement, Harrison? When you tire of playing with your toys, you know where to find me." She glided away, leaving a poisonous cloud of doubt in her wake. The breaking point, Natalie made it through another hour of the gala on autopilot. She smiled when appropriate, made small talk with people whose names she immediately forgot, and danced with Harrison when the orchestra played. But Jennifer's words had burrowed under her skin like thorns. "You've been quiet," Harrison observed as they swayed to a slow waltz. "What Jennifer said is bothering you, is it true?" Natalie asked quietly. "Am I just a distraction? Something different to entertain you until you get bored?" Harrison stopped dancing. Right there in the middle of the floor, with hundreds of eyes on them, he stopped moving and looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Come with me." He led her out of the ballroom, through a side door and onto a balcony overlooking the Chicago skyline. The November air was cold, and Harrison immediately shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "Jennifer is wrong about many things, but she is right about one," he said, his hands gripping the balcony railing. "I do get bored easily. I have spent my entire adult life building a company, making money, achieving goals that were supposed to make me happy, and none of it did." "Harrison, you do not have to explain." "Yes, I do." He turned to face her. "Because you need to understand that what I feel for you is not boredom relief. It is not a game or a distraction. Natalie, you terrify me. I terrify you." "Completely." A smile flickered across his face. "You made me smile more in 3 weeks than I have in 3 years. You fixed my tie every morning. I started looking forward to it so much that I deliberately tied them wrong just to make sure you would come close. You hum while you work, and now my office feels empty when you are not there. Do you understand what that means? Natalie's heart was racing. What does it mean? It means I am falling in love with you. And that scares me more than any business deal or market crash ever could. Because if I lose you, it will matter. Really matter? The words hung in the cold air between them. Natalie stepped closer, reaching up to touch his face. What if I told you I am falling in love with you too? And that scares me just as much. Then I would say we are both in trouble. Harrison covered her hand with his. Beautiful, terrifying trouble. This time, when he kissed her, it was not the careful, testing kiss they had shared once before in his office. This was a kiss that admitted everything. Need, fear, hope, and the kind of love that changed everything it touched. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Harrison rested his forehead against hers. I want to do this right, Natalie. No more hiding, no more pretending, this is just professional. I want everyone to know you are mine, even if people talk, especially if people talk. Let them see that Harrison Knight finally found something more important than quarterly earnings and market share. Let them see I found you. The office stormed Monday. Morning brought the consequences Harrison had promised to face head-on. An emergency meeting was called with the board of directors. Patricia Walsh had apparently been busy over the weekend, gathering support to challenge what she called Harrison's inappropriate relationship with a subordinate employee. Natalie sat at her desk, trying to focus on work, while her entire future hung in the balance. Corey had brought her stress cookies from her favorite bakery, but they sat untouched beside her keyboard. He is going to fight for you, Corey said confidently. I have never seen Harrison Knight fight for anything the way he fights when someone disrespects you. Did you hear what he did to that executive from accounting who made the joke about you being the boss's pet? Reassigned him to the Alaskan office immediately? Without hesitation? That man is in love with you, Natalie. Real inconvenient. Change your whole life? Love? The meeting lasted 3 hours. When Harrison finally emerged, he looked tired but satisfied. He walked straight to Natalie's desk, ignoring the curious stares from everyone in the office. It is handled, he said simply. Patricia has been offered an early retirement package she could not refuse. The board has been reminded that my personal life is exactly that, personal. And I have implemented a new company policy about workplace relationships that requires full transparency and ethical conduct, but does not forbid them outright. You changed company policy? I changed several things today. Harrison smiled. See, including my emergency contact information. I put you down. I hope that is okay. Natalie felt tears prickling her eyes. That is more than okay. Good now, my tie is crooked. Fix it. She laughed, standing up to adjust the tie that was, as always, perfectly straight. But as her hands moved through the familiar motion, she realized this was their language. This was how Harrison asked her to come close, how he reminded himself that she was real and present in his. There, she whispered, smoothing down the silk. Perfect. Not yet, Harrison said quietly, so only she could hear, but getting closer every day. As Natalie sat back down at her desk, she caught sight of her reflection in her computer screen. She was smiling. Really, genuinely smiling. The girl who had spilled coffee on her CEO 3 weeks ago had been terrified of losing her job. The woman she was becoming was learning that sometimes the best things in life came from happy accidents. And the Ice King who nobody dared approach, he was melting. One fixed tie at a time. The invitation December arrived in Chicago with the kind of cold that made people question their life choices. Natalie had been dating Harrison officially for 5 weeks now, and while the initial office gossip had died down, their relationship still generated interested whispers wherever they went together. Harrison seemed unbothered by the attention, but Natalie knew he noticed every sideways glance, every calculated comment. On a particularly frigid Friday evening, as Natalie was preparing to leave for the day, Harrison appeared at her desk with an unusual expression. Not quite nervous, but close. I want to take you somewhere this weekend, he said without preamble. Somewhere important to me. Okay, Natalie replied, curious. Where? Vermont. My family has a cabin in the mountains near Stowe. My grandmother still lives there part of the year. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I have not brought anyone there since my parents died. I would like to bring you. Natalie understood immediately what he was offering. This was not just a weekend trip. This was Harrison opening the most private part of his life and inviting her inside. I would love to go, she said softly. Relief flooded his features. Pack warm. Vermont in December is unforgiving. Meeting Eleanor, the drive to Vermont took 7 hours through increasingly snowy landscape. Harrison drove with quiet confidence, one hand on the wheel and the other holding Natalie's. They talked about everything and nothing, the comfortable conversation of two people. Learning to be completely themselves around each other, the cabin turned out to be a beautiful timber structure nestled in pine woods. With smoke curling from the chimney and warm light glowing in the windows, before Harrison could even turn off the engine, the front door opened and a small, elegant woman stepped onto the porch. Eleanor Knight was 78 years old, and possessed the kind of presence that made people sit up straighter. She wore practical wool pants and a thick cardigan, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. But her eyes were the same striking gray as her grandson's, sharp and knowing. You must be Natalie, Eleanor said warmly, pulling her into an unexpected hug. Harrison has told me so much about you. Come inside before you freeze. The interior of the cabin was everything Natalie had imagined. Exposed beams, massive stone fireplace, comfortable furniture that invited you to curl up with a book. But what caught her attention were the photographs covering every available surface. Harrison as a baby, as a gap-toothed child, as an awkward teenager. Harrison with two adults, who must have been his parents, and a younger boy who looked like a smaller version of him. That is Timothy, Eleanor said, noticing her gaze. Harrison's younger brother lives in Seattle now, runs a non-profit for foster children. He will be here tomorrow, actually. I invited him to meet you. Harrison raised an eyebrow at his grandmother. Did you now? Oh, hush. You were bringing a girl home for the first time in a decade. Of course I called Timothy. He deserves to meet her too. Eleanor winked at Natalie. Besides, someone needs to tell her all the embarrassing stories about you before she gets too attached. I am already attached, Natalie admitted, making Harrison smile. Good, Eleanor said with satisfaction. Then you will stick around through the embarrassing stories. Who wants hot chocolate? The stories we carry that evening, after a dinner, of Eleanor's famous pot roast. The three of them sat by the fireplace while snow fell softly outside. Eleanor was in rare storytelling form, sharing tales of Harrison's childhood that made him wince and Natalie laugh until her sides hurt. He was such a serious child, Eleanor reminisced. Always reading, always planning. Even at 8 years old, he had a 5-year plan. Can you imagine? I can absolutely imagine that, Natalie said, squeezing Harrison's hand. But he was also the kindest boy. When his brother Timothy was born, Harrison was 6 years old. He would sit by Timothy's crib for hours, just watching to make sure he was breathing. He took being a big brother very seriously. Harrison's expression had grown distant. I failed at that job, he said quietly. When Mom and Dad died, Timothy was only 13. I was so busy trying to save the company and keep us afloat financially that I barely saw him. He practically raised himself. That is not true, Eleanor said firmly. You did what you had to do to give both of you a future. Timothy never resented you for it. Maybe he should have. Natalie turned to face Harrison fully. Is that what you? I've been carrying around guilt about surviving? About doing what you had to do? Harrison was quiet for a long moment. After they died, I promised myself I would never let anyone get close again. It hurt too much to lose them. Building the company gave me something to focus on, something I could control. But it also gave me an excuse to keep everyone at arm's length. Until a clumsy girl spilled coffee on you, Natalie offered gently. Until you fixed my tie without asking permission first. You just reached out and touched me like it was the most natural thing in the world. I realized how much I had been missing. How cold I had let everything become. Eleanor stood up, patting her grandson's shoulder. I am going to bed and leave you two to talk. Natalie, dear, your room is upstairs, second door on the right. Harrison knows where the extra blankets are if you need them. She paused at the stairs.
Also,
The northern lights are supposed to be visible tonight.
at?
You can see them best from the back deck. After Eleanor retired, Harrison and Natalie bundled up in thick coats and went outside. The deck overlooked a frozen lake surrounded by pine trees, and above them, the sky was putting on a spectacular show. Green and purple lights danced across the darkness, ethereal and beautiful. I used to come out here with my dad, Harrison said quietly, his arm around Natalie's shoulders. He would tell me stories about the lights. Viking legends, scientific explanations, everything. He made the world feel magical. He sounds wonderful. He was. Both my parents were. They loved each other completely, the kind of love that made everyone around them believe in romance. I always thought I would find that someday. But then they died, and I convinced myself that kind of love was too dangerous. Too painful if you lost it. Natalie leaned into his warmth. And now I think the danger is worth it. Harrison turned to face her, his hands cupping her face gently. Natalie, these past few weeks with you have taught me something important. Being safe and alone is not actually living, it's just existing. You made me want to live again. Harrison, wait, let me finish. I know this is fast. I know we have only been together for a few weeks, but I have also lived enough years in emotional isolation to recognize something real when I find it. And this is real. You are real. What I feel for you is real. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Natalie's breath caught. I am not asking you to marry me right now, Harrison said quickly. Well, I am, but I'm asking you to wait to answer. I want you to have time to think about what it means to be with me. The scrutiny, the expectations, the fact that I am still learning how to let someone in completely. He opened the box to reveal a ring that was somehow both elegant and understated. A single diamond set in platinum, with smaller stones forming a delicate band that looked like frost and starlight. This belonged to my grandmother, Harrison continued. She gave it to me yesterday and told me not to be an idiot about asking you. Her words, not mine. So here's what I'm asking. Natalie Brooks, will you consider spending your life with someone who is going to mess up sometimes? Who has trouble expressing emotions and occasionally ties his ties crooked on purpose, just to make you come close? Who loves you so completely it terrifies him? Tears were streaming down Natalie's face. Harrison, you do not have to give me time to think about it. You should think I do not need time. She smiled through her tears. Yes, absolutely, completely, yes. Harrison stared at her for a moment as if he could not quite believe what he was hearing. Then he laughed, a sound of pure joy that echoed across the frozen lake. He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her under the dancing northern lights. And Natalie thought her heart might burst from happiness. Coming home, Timothy Knight arrived the next morning, bringing chaos and laughter with him. At 27, he was smaller than Harrison, but shared the same gray eyes and easy smile. He pulled Natalie into a hug within 30 seconds of meeting her. "Thank God," he said dramatically. Someone finally got through his defenses. "Do you know how worried Grandma and I have been?" He was turning into a grumpy hermit. "I am standing right here," Harrison pointed out. "I know. I am talking about you, not to you. There is a difference." Timothy grinned at Natalie. "He is already less grumpy, by the way. That is all you. We owe you a debt of gratitude." Over breakfast, Timothy shared his own stories about Harrison. The time he stayed up all night helping Timothy with a science project, the way he had worked 3 jobs to pay for Timothy's college, the fact that Harrison secretly donated to Timothy's foster care nonprofit every month under an anonymous name. "He acts like he does not care about anything but business," Timothy said seriously. "But that is just armor. Underneath, he is the most caring person I know. He just forgot how to show it for a while." Natalie looked at Harrison, who was trying to hide how touched he was by his brother's words. She thought about the man who had fired an executive for making a cruel joke about her, the man who had changed company policy to protect their relationship, the man who had driven 7 hours through snow to share his most precious place with her. "I know," she said softly. "I see it." That afternoon, the 4 of them went ice skating on the frozen lake. Eleanor watched from the deck, wrapped in blankets and drinking spiked hot chocolate. Timothy was showing off, doing spins and skating backward. Harrison held Natalie's hand, steadying her when she wobbled, laughing when she nearly pulled him down with her. "I am terrible at this," Natalie admitted after her 5th near fall. "You are perfect," Harrison corrected, pulling her close. "At this and everything else?" As the sun began to set, painting the snow pink and gold, Harrison gathered everyone together. "I have an announcement," he said, sounding uncharacteristically nervous. "Last night, under circumstances that Grandma definitely orchestrated, I asked Natalie to marry me, and she said yes." Eleanor clapped her hands together. Finally. Someone with sense in this family. "Natalie, welcome. You are exactly what he needs." Timothy hugged them both. "Do I get to be best man? I have so many embarrassing stories to share in my speech." "Absolutely not," Harrison said, but he was smiling. They returned Sunday evening. As they packed to return to Chicago, Eleanor pulled Natalie aside. "Thank you," the older woman said simply, "for seeing past the walls he built. For being brave enough to love him anyway." "It was not hard," Natalie admitted. "Once I got close enough to see the real him. That is the secret, is it not? Most people never get close enough. They see the ice and assume that is all there is. But you saw the warmth underneath. You saw my grandson, back in Chicago." Word of their engagement spread through Knight Enterprises like wildfire. Corey screamed so loudly that security came to check on him. Even some of the executives who had been skeptical about their relationship offered genuine congratulations. On Monday morning, Natalie walked into Harrison's office at 7:15 a.m. with his black coffee. He was standing by the window, looking out over the city, and turned when she entered. "Your tie is crooked," Natalie observed, setting down the coffee and moving closer. "Is it?" Harrison's eyes sparkled with mischief. "How careless of me." As her hands moved through the familiar motion of fixing his tie, Natalie thought about how much had changed since the first time she had done this. Then she had been terrified and apologetic, certain she had ruined her career. Now she was fixing the tie of the man she would marry, in the office where their story had begun. "There," she said softly, smoothing down the silk. "Perfect." Harrison caught her hands, holding them against his chest. "Not perfect yet. But with you, I am finally getting close." Through the window behind him, Chicago was waking up. Millions of people starting their days, most of them never knowing that up on the 40th floor of Knight Enterprises, Ice King was learning to feel again. That a simple act of kindness, of reaching out without fear to fix a crooked tie, had changed to lives completely. Natalie stood on her toes to kiss him, and Harrison held her close, and for the first time in years. He felt truly warm. Some people would say it was impossible to fall in love so quickly. Others would claim workplace romances never worked. A few would insist that people did not really change, that damaged hearts stayed damaged forever. But those people had never met Natalie Brooks, who believed in fixing things that seemed broken, who hummed while she worked and saw good in everyone, who dared to approach the unapproachable and discovered that sometimes, beneath the coldest exterior, the warmest heart was waiting to be found. And they had never met Harrison Knight after he learned that being safe was not the same as being alive, that taking risks on people was more important than taking risks on markets, that sometimes the best thing that could happen to you was a beautiful disaster that spilled coffee on your perfectly planned life and rearranged everything you thought. You knew about love, the Ice King and the girl who melted his frozen heart. It was not the story anyone expected, but it was the story they both needed, and it was only just beginning.